There's a video that recently came out by Carl Jobst about the graded video game market and how two companies were doing a lot of shady shit, the Wada Games and the Heritage Auctions. And I want to talk about that situation. I want to talk about that video. And then I want to relate it to Flesh and Blood and the trading card game collectability market because I think that overall, this is a big flashlight that's being shed on the graded video game market. But I think it's only a matter of time before that flashlight shines on the whole trading card game realm and possibly Flesh and Blood. And if you haven't seen the video, you should. It's really epic. This guy Carl Jobst does a really good job at like dissecting this shit, and it was almost like a documentary. It was really in detail. So essentially, I want to summarize it at first. There's the Wada Games and Wada Grading Company, right? Wada basically takes video games and puts it in a plastic case and puts a grade on it. They're like PwC or Beck. And then you have Heritage Auctions, and Heritage Auctions are just like an eBay auction site, but their own site, and they have their own promenades and what have you. And the whole issue, well, I mean, there's many little issues that Carl, weaved over an hour long of his YouTube video. It was really good, but the main point that he indicated that it was kind of irrefutable is that there are very high up individuals in both companies that had gone in buddy buddy in a related party transactions to buy a Super Mario Brothers 2, I believe, video game, and they bought it for something like in the hundred thousands, right? And they did that in 1 year. And then in the next year, or in 2 years after that, so only 2 years, it increased in price dramatically and they sold it for, I believe, $1 million. Whatever the figures are, related parties of WADA and Auction House bought a video game, right? For a certain amount. And then what they did after that is they just hyped it up. They hyped it up on the Heritage Auction site. Well, like, whoa, look at how much this game sold for. And they were kind of relating it. They weren't relating it, but it seemed like the Black Lotus of the video game world. That the highest dollar value, and it was pushing the mark, and it was making everything else rise. And they just kept promoting it. I mean, they had individuals on Pawn Stars, and they were like, oh yeah, this is a ton of money. Oh, this video game, oh yeah, this is extremely rare. This is, they were just making insane numbers up. And it really goes to question of like, okay, how morally upright is this? How much does this person who's giving me information have a say or have a invested interest in what goes up or down? And the whole big problem with a lot of the shady shit that's going on that Carl talked about is there's not a lot of legal realm for any of it. And I'm no bird lawyer. I'm no like lawyer type person, but from what I know, it's just not it's not like against the law. It's just kind of weird. And there's just a bunch of instances like that. And just to, give you a high level, I mean, you had high up individuals in Wada Games, the grading company, buy out like tons of video games. Like they go out and they just like say, "Hey, how much do you have? How many how many video games do you have in your collection?" And they're like, "Oh, I'll just take them all." And they were just hoarding them because they they believed in the grading video game concept and they thought all of the games would go up in price. And they worked for the graded video game company, so it kind of makes you wonder, like, do you think that they would automatically be able to get the highest grade on shit just because they are in the building and they kind of can like slip someone an email? It opens up all these different things because they were the graded video game company, and or one of two, I believe. And when you have individuals there, you have a lot of power, you have a lot of clout. And when you're doing all these different things and they have these things like one guy high up bought like this one specific collection from this really, really big video game collection, right? And it was called, I believe, the Carolina collection. And apparently, what Wada did is even though that high up individual bought all these video games and it was just another random video game buyout, they put like a specific tag on all of the graded games from that collection, and it further marketed to the consumer, hey, this is a specialty item. But isn't it kind of weird that the main person who profits off that transaction is one of the board of directors at Wada Games? It's just very odd, man. It's just a very odd situations that you come into with this whole thing where you're a high up person in these companies. And when you have graded video games or any type of collectible, collectibles are assets. And they appreciate. And if you are, behind the wheel of the ship that manages this whole market, especially if you're Heritage Auctions, the auction house is the market legitimately. And when they publish articles on their site, I mean, the amount of credibility they have with their consumer is very high because they legit are they are the auction house. They are where you buy and sell games. And then same with the WADA grading. It's you have the graded video game company, like the people who says, okay, this is the valuation. It's like if you had like the Nasdaq on one end, Heritage Auctions, and then you had somebody who's like I don't know, like the valuator for stocks of the P&Ls and all that shit. It's just overall, to summarize it, just very shady stuff was happening with related parties. People high up not divulging, not being transparent to the people they were buying video games from. They were saying, "Hey, I'll just buy it all out. Oh, I'm just some random dude." And then turns out later that this person was like high up in WADA, and then all this stuff where they were. It seems like they were hyping up the game market. And just as a side note, I heard different rumors. I think a couple of months ago with this dude Gary V, I believe, King Pokemon, the whole thing where people were thinking he was doing the same thing where he was just inflating stuff on Pawn Stars. Apparently, Pawn Stars is a method to mass advertise and not even sell your shit, but just like hype it up. And it's just kind of scary. All of it's just it's odd, and I think the whole thing that's going to come about this, right? If anything, is just more regulations, more things where more different things where you have to be more transparent. If you are a grading company or if you are a auction house, you have to be more transparent to your consumers. And if you write an article, you say, "Oh yeah, by the way." The person who's writing this article or the people who are directors of this company, we have X amount of products that we're just talking about in this article. There's got to be a lot more transparency, a lot more disclosures, and maybe, I think there's going to be a lot of things where you can't, like if you're high up director in these companies, you can't go in on a related party transaction. You can't have three people high up in these companies buy a video game together, or you can't have them grade video games at all or grade a collectible. So I think that it's just going to go that way. How long it's going to take for that? Probably many, many years. But I think that this is just the tip of the iceberg for all the other shady shit that happens in a bunch of other markets too. And I don't know what it's going to take, but I definitely think that there's going to be an event. Not this one. This one's pretty big. But I definitely think there's going to be another event in the future that spurs on the SEC or big regulatory bodies to say, you know what, this is kind of weird. Like we need to put some sanctions on this. We need to put something through here. And the whole reason too is the like it the reason why that this is a big deal now is because it's very tangible. We know that a lot of these things are happening from Carl's video because they were just on websites. These people were not good at hiding this stuff. They were not good at concealing it. And I guess that's kind of a devil's advocate thing is like, well, they didn't try to hide things. They were very transparent about, what they were, but they didn't really put like, hey, like they put like the names of the people in articles, but they didn't really explain it fully. But even still, is it right for high up people in organizations like WADA to evaluate stuff to say, hey, I think this is worth this much, even if they own that piece? It just adds a bunch of questions. And again, things aren't really legally wrong, but it more asks the question of, is this right? So it's just very interesting to me. Now, I I want to go into Flesh and Blood and the trading card game. Wow. And you might say, well, Bronson, no worries, man. We're all good here. Nothing shady happens in the trading card game realm of the secondary market. Yeah. No, it does, man. I mean, I don't want to say affirmatively 100%, but I just can't imagine any realm where things aren't going on in the background. And before anybody thinks that I'm outing anyone or pointing fingers at any type of person or organization or anything, I'm not. It's just, it happens, man. And when you have high dollar value things like, collectible cards, you're gonna have these things happen. There's gonna be weird things. There's gonna be insider trading. There's gonna be a bunch of other related party things or buddy buddy systems. There's going to be gray market. It all comes with the territory, man. That this is just, it just happens. And I think for Flesh and Blood, insider information is the hardest. And I think that the best thing that Legend Story Studios can do is just be extremely transparent. And I think that in the past, I don't know what's transpired between conversations with the stores and the vendors and all this stuff, but you know I think that when Legend Story Studios communicates to any of their stores or any of the people out there, they have to know that, okay, this information has a chance to leak to other people. And will the people who have that information have a good like uh, advantage over the rest of the market out there? Because if you think about it, if Legend Story Studios, let's say, thinks that they're gonna stop printing Tales of Aria, faster, right? And they're like, oh, actually, we're going to cut it off supply. Or let's say the print run information is known right now by Legend Story Studios. This is a better example. Let's say Legend Story Studios knows that 50,000 boxes of Tales of Aria are going to be printed, right? Well, what if that information gets leaked to a store or someone else in the company tells someone else, or maybe it's not even Legend Story Studios, maybe it's the print companies, maybe it's one of the places that prints it, and they say, oh, this is the quantity of the boxes. Well, how many people know that information, and then how many people of those people would like an extra $1,000 in their pocket just by messaging people on Reddit and selling that information? And it's very odd, and I don't want to point fingers or point accusations. It could be them. It could be, maybe there's a store owner that found out from some way, from like a box or something, or they cracked the code on stuff. Information could get into people's hands. And the issue with that is you have a subsect of the market, a very small group of people who know information that the rest of the market does not know. And when you have that situation, that kind of is insider trading. And like the graded video game thing, it's really not a big deal because, legally it's not a big deal. But in reality, it's like, is this kind of shady? And then if that information is acted upon, that's even worse. I mean, if someone knows something ahead of everyone else and then acts upon it and then buys it out, it's kind of weird. And another thing that really bothers me, and what is really I take personally, and what I try to do the most, is just be transparent. And especially with having a YouTube channel and being a person, a figure, talking on the internet, I think as you grow bigger as a content creator, you need to take it a lot more seriously, because it's just weird. And I think another shady thing is, if me as a content creator, let's say I bought all of, like all of one type of different card, right? Let's say cold foil crazy brew, and this is not investment advice at all. This is just me, just a normal guy talking out my ass. But let's say, for instance, I bought all the cold foil crazy brews, and they've dropped in price dramatically, so they're around 120. Let's say I bought like 20 of them, and then spiked the price up to $400. And also, I made a video and I said, Bronson thinks the cold foil crazy brew is going to the moon. It's an undervalued card. There's only 1,000 in existence, and crazy brew's gonna be big in the next meta. And let's say I made like a ton of those videos, right? Isn't that kind of shady? And what if in all these videos I didn't say how many I owned? I said, "Oh, it's awesome going to the moon and all this stuff," and I think I say what I think and all this stuff, but I don't disclose my position on the card. I think that that's kind of in a weird way. And I know that in the past I've talked about alpha, common, bulk. You know me, man. If you've been listening to what I've said, I made a couple videos recently about it. I've disclosed my position. I own about like a 0.5% of the total amount of bulk, and I feel comfortable saying that too and making those videos because bulk is bulk. It's laughed at. It's no big deal, and I wanted to make videos about bulk for a while now. I've wanted to make it, maybe 6 months to 8 months ago when the market was hot, but I chose not to because I didn't want to say, okay, man, I'm actively buying bulk, and then tell it to you guys. And then even though not many people listen to me, even though not many people listen 15 minutes into a Bronson video where I'm just, rambling about random shit, but the reason why I held off on making videos until the market was soft as hell, and then I talked about Alpha Bulk a lot, and I made a couple videos about it, is because I didn't want to poke the bear. I didn't want to be shady. And at the bottom of every my videos, I say, hey man, I'm just a normal guy in a normal room, and this is not investment advice or whatever. And I know a lot of my videos don't even have investment stuff, but still, I just want to have that on every single damn one because I don't want to be shady. I don't want to be in this situation. And, back in the day when I was first covering Flesh and Blood, I love talking about the market. I love talking about specific prices. I love talking about how things, I didn't think were overvalued or undervalued. It was a lot of fun. But at the end of the day, this game went extremely parabolic and nuts in the secondary market. I just didn't feel like I should talk about this shit. It really was hurricane FOMO. People were just spending nuts amount of money on cards and all this stuff. There's no way anyone could predict that first and foremost, but it's just kind of weird if I would be one of those people who found something, bought it all out, price spiked it, and then everyone else bought it, and then I sold into that. That is kind of shady, and again, man, there's no legal stuff or moral stuff. It's more moral stuff. There's no legal stuff against doing any of these actions. And that's why I think regulation is definitely going to come into the graded video game realm, into the collectible card game realm, and all this stuff. It's just going to happen. It's just a matter of time. And especially with things that are in the background that are much higher dollar value. Because one thing, and all on this video on this topic, I want to talk about money laundering. Fun thing. And again, I made a video about money laundering before. I don't know how it works. I don't know who's doing it. I don't know where it exists. I just know it exists because it's just I've heard different people talking about different stuff in a bunch of other videos, and it just makes sense to me. If you think about asset transfer and money management of people who, want to do that kind of stuff of unregistered assets. And in the bottom of Carl Jobs' video, he even commented and he said, "Hey, a lot of people are talking about money laundering, and I don't want to talk about it because I don't know. I don't. He couldn't prove it. He didn't have evidence, so he didn't want to, slap anyone with anything, and that's very fair. And I think that that's very noble of him, but it's just very smart as an investigative journalist. I'm not an investigative person. I'm just a normal guy. And from money laundering aspect, I think that Carl had a really interesting take on it. It's that it doesn't cause bubbles in the collectible realm. And what does that mean? So if there's a collectible card game, I don't think money laundering happens initially and the game goes parabolic because of that. I think games go parabolic for a bunch of different other shady reasons, but even natural reasons. Games go like to the moon. And then what you have is people who are, let's say they're selling counterfeit $100 bills and they want to figure out best way of, getting their counterfeit $100 bills, or let's say they have real $100 bills. Let's say they have $500,000 in money that they cannot tell the IRS where it came from. I think that collectibles are a great realm for them to transfer their cash into something tangible in an intermediary before they offload it again for real cash. Because think about it. It's kind of like the craziest thing. You could say, "Oh, I bought a Alpha Welcome to Wrath booster box and I pulled this Heart of Fandel," but no one else knows that. You could be lying. And just to go into specifics. So let's say you are that individual where you have all this money and you see Flesh and Blood. Well, look at this. Heart of Fandel is going for $30,000. I can buy 5 of those, and I can liquidate 150,000 of my money into this asset type. And instead of having $150,000 in like 8 different briefcases, I can have it in literally like this. Like think about $150,000 in $100 bills, and then think about 5 Heart of Fandels. This is how big. This is how big 5 Heart of Fandels are. You convert that huge wad of money into this small amount. Same with the graded video games. Is you convert a ton of money into in a small box. And I think that overall, I have no idea what I'm talking about. But other people out there do know what they're talking about, and that they don't talk about it because if they talked about it, you know, that's why it's so hush hush. That's why you haven't heard about this. That's why I'm sounding crazy, is because it's just not talked about. Where people transfer these money, big more amount of money into Heart of Fandels or into legendary cold foil cards from Welcome to Wrath or anything else, they see these bubbles out there in the collectible realm, and they see that these things aren't tracked. No one cares about this. Great way to acquire this. And usually big deals are done in cash, man. They're done in like a bank or any type of institution where or even outside of institutions say, I'll give you a ton of money. Here you go. Here's for that card and a done deal. It's off the books, off the radar. If you do it especially through cryptocurrency, then it's totally off the radar. You just give someone a key fob. Yep, this has $150,000 on it. Oh, give me your cold foil collection and your binder and you're good to go. And I think that that could be happening in Flesh and Blood, but I'm not 100% sure. I don't think the amounts are high enough yet. I think that with graded video games, you had certain games selling for like $7,000 and then all the way up to $100,000 plus. And I think in that realm, it was more likely. When you have a graded video game for $100,000, it's very attractive because if you think about what people are trying to do, they're trying to convert a large amount of cash into the smallest amount of item space. And not only that, but just, trying to make it and what's great about the collectibles and games and cards is people don't really care about it. It's like a kid's game, is what a lot of people think out there who aren't really, familiar with how card games work and how many different card games out there. If you ask, John Q. Public about Flesh and Blood and tell him he's at TCG, he's gonna be like, it's like Pokemon, right? Is this like Beanie Babies, the collectibles? That's their perception on this shit. So when you think about money laundering as a whole, it's very attractive to go in this stuff because A, nobody gives a damn about it, nobody understands it, and B, it's really small and there's almost zero regulations upon it. And I think there's going to be situations in the future where I think that would tip the scales and make this thing uh, really have a lot of regulation. I think if there's an event that happens in the future, I think money laundering is going to be the one that makes the SEC for the US government or any other government body to really give a damn and to really crack down and really understand the whole collectability market and try to put stuff in place so this stuff doesn't happen. But I think that's about everything I wanted to say on this topic. Again, if you haven't seen the video, please do, man. I'll put a link down below. Carl is just a really good video about investigative journalism on the whole Wada Games Heritage Auction thing, and I don't know how much of it's true or not true. It seemed pretty legit, but again, the flesh slate right now is on the whole graded games. It's only a matter of time before it becomes front and center with the trading card game realm. And if you're someone who's doing that kind of shit, I think this is a big wake up call that either A, you need to start hiding your shit better. You need to, delete a lot of documents and kind of, you know, tighten up around what you're doing. Or B, maybe you consider, getting out of it or putting more disclosures. If you're a fellow content creator and you're buying a lot of shit and you know information before everyone else, maybe you shouldn't act on it. Maybe if you are buying a lot of shit, when you make a video, tell other people in the video what you're buying and say, hey, you know, I'm buying this because I believe in it, but I also want to talk about it. So that's about it. Thanks for watching, man.